All right. So in this video, I'm going to be going over some of the stuff that I do. Now, once again, this is for like palatal expansion and stuff. And I am, once again, a health maxer. I am not necessarily a looks maxer. So even though the indirect benefit of this could be looks maxing, I am actually doing this for health. So, okay, first off, let's start off with what am I doing to speed this up? And once again, if you don't know all the details of like what I'm doing previously, go check that stuff out. And if you want to see my face previously, then you can go check that out as well. But I think it's like pretty obvious that it's working. And this is because you can see this line right here in comparison to before, which you couldn't see. So I'll mew a little bit so you can sort of see what I'm talking about. If you look at my previous videos and then you look at right now. So I think that line is a lot more apparent in comparison to before. And I think that this is working. Now, I'm going to say, what exactly am I doing to get this? Now, there's a couple things. Once again, I will never gate my stuff behind a paywall. So you don't have to worry about that. I will say, though, my methods are extremely unconventional. And in fact, I think they work incredibly well. But there's a little bit of problems. So first, follow everything in the min-maxing health playlist if you haven't already, and then check out the bone remodeling part series, where specifically the videos where I say part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and all that stuff for the palatal expansion and stuff, basically, in order to improve breathing. So what do? First, well, if you don't already know, if you're not mewing, start mewing. That's number 1. Number 2, thumb pulling, but I will go into a little bit of details on what you should be doing exactly when it comes to thumb pulling, because I have actually seen results if you haven't seen the previous videos. 3, there's something as of recently that I've come to and I've tried, and I think that it's actually making a pretty big difference, and it's because you can hear the cracking again, which I've explained in my previous videos. You can literally like hear the bones in your face like literally crack. So I think that means that it's like actually splitting them and you're actually moving them. I think the movement is incredibly small, but if you do this over a longer period of time, it becomes much more obvious and you'll actually get to see results, which in my case, like, it's sort of cool. I actually get to see physical results. And one of them, okay, so once again, follow everything in the min-maxing health playlist, because I've only got this result in like 3 months or something. But 2, thumb pulling and how you're doing it. So that I think is a little bit important, and the reason is because you need to apply a certain amount of pressure. That's number 1. Number 2 is this is gonna sound weird, not using utensils. Yeah, so what do I mean? Not using utensils. I mean not using, this is gonna sound crazy, not using like a fork or a knife. Yeah, I know. So that's actually pretty important for this case, and the reason is because in order to incentivize this quote-unquote forward growth, I think you need to start like using the front of your teeth. But if you notice, I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the modern age, there's like almost no use of the incisors when it comes to chewing food, because you're using a knife to cut it and then you're putting it in your mouth and you're basically chewing it with your molars. You're never actually using your incisors, which is, I think this is a crucial mistake. And I think this actually could be an extremely important aspect. Once again, you're going to see the results that I'm doing in about like 6 months. You're going to see more noticeable results anyways in about like 6 months to, or at least 3 months to 2 years and 9 months, around that time range. So yeah. Once again, this is just for anybody else who wants to experiment at the same pace that I am going at, because if I get my results, let's say a year from now, then you're going to be like, oh my God, what was he doing, right? Well, you already know what I'm doing. You can follow it along, or if I don't get results, once again, it's just like a sort of obvious thing again. So yeah, that's just for you guys out there. Okay. Anyways, let's get into details of like what exactly the main things I think are. So in this video, go check out all my previous videos. I'm not going to talk about the details in those. 1, stop using utensils. So don't use a fork, don't use a knife. And I really do mean that is extremely important. Now, not only that, I think you have to be eating, there are preferred cuts, I guess, of meat that you would want to be eating. But in this case, you want to be eating the meat that's a little bit tougher. And the reason is because you want to make sure that you're actually using your incisors when you're eating it. So you're actually going to have to hold the meat with your hands. I mean, I never thought I'd be doing this, but here we are, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, if you look at all the other stuff that I've done. Oof, I've done a lot of experimentation, and it does seem to work every single time. So anyways, so you have to actually be using holding the meat with your hands, and you have to be chewing and tearing like this every single time. You have to basically be tearing it off you have to be using your incisors sort of like how you use the knife in the steak. Like if you're eating your steak, right? You have to use it like you're using the knife. Basically, all of that pressure that you use while you're using the knife, instead you're trying to put that on the front of your maxilla, and you're trying to basically make your maxilla move forward. Now, what's really interesting about this, what I will say is I have noticed this actually, because there's another way to train this besides eating without utensils. Although I don't think that this one is as ideal, but I think that you can sort of like get a gist or an understanding of like how it works, because you can literally hear the cracking once again, which I think hearing the cracking is extremely important for this entire process. If you're not hearing the cracking, and if you're doing this for long enough, and you're actually like pulling really hard and you're putting enough pressure, then I think there is something else for you, but this is just for me. So I'm letting you guys know. So what you're doing is you're putting as much pressure as you can on the front of your maxilla, and in this case, when you do that, it helps. So the amount, the amount of newtons that you're putting, I guess you could say force in this case, the amount of force that you're putting when you're mewing versus your thumb pulling versus chewing are three completely different forces. I think mewing is the weakest force, but it is the most consistent force, which I think is very important. So that's number one. Number two, I think thumb pulling is not the strongest force, but it's not the weakest force either. And I think it's a helpful force that you can use because it's what you can do in between the time that you are mewing and eating. And I think the thing that you can do is during the time that you're eating. And I think this is extremely, extremely important. And it is, and once again, I'm going to say this again, it's chewing with your incisors, which means you have to remove the utensils. You cannot use utensils if you are going to chew with your incisors, because I'm going to say right now, when you're like lifting the steak with your knife or your fork, whatever right? It's going to be too difficult to use that utensil and tear it off without the either utensil flying off or the steak flying off. So don't do that. The second way you can demonstrate this, I think, is using a cloth. Now, this is actually similar to what babies do, by the way. This is extremely interesting. I haven't really given this much thought until I was like, wait a second, what if I just try what babies do? So what do babies do? Babies naturally do something called teething, where they'll like teeth and they'll be like, right? So this is extremely interesting, and this is actually what got me to think that this idea of quick forward expansion, as well as, for that matter, like seeing a result here, like, I mean, this is an insane, in my opinion, in 3 months to get a result like this. Like, if you haven't seen my previous videos, then go check them out. But this is ridiculous. So my old videos, by the way, because I most of my videos actually I put out ahead of time, so everything that you're seeing right now is probably made like a month before or a month ago, sometimes it's like 2 weeks ago, but regardless. Okay, so what do I mean? Well, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this cloth. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now, you have to have been thumb pulling in order to hear what I'm talking about. So you have to have been thumb pulling, and you have to have been mewing. And you have to have done this for at least, I would say, probably a week, and do it at the rigor that I explained in my previous videos. I'm not going to explain that here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this cloth, any cloth. Okay. Usually this cloth is from basically like a bathroom, right? So, like those bathroom cloths, something similar to that. And what you're going to do is you're going to take it, bite into it basically, and when you're biting into it, you want to be pulling your head and moving your head backwards as much as you possibly can. So you're going to take it, you're going to bite backwards, and then you're going to hopefully anyways hear the cracking, because I heard the cracking. I definitely heard the cracking. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. All right, so I'll sort of demonstrate what I'm talking about. So bite and pull. Now I try to do it both. So you can put the force in different directions. You can put it downwards by like pulling downwards while you're biting on it, or you can pull it upwards. I think you're going to get different results if you do that. So I just do it like all around so I can actually hear the cracking, because you will hear the cracking, which is really interesting. Now the thing is, I don't really know which direction it is because I haven't given it too much thought. So, but I do think that this is this is sort of an indicator to me that if I hear the cracking while I'm doing this, similar to that of thumb pulling, or similar to that when you do enough thumb pulling and then you do a little bit of this and you can hear cracking, like I think that's a clear indicator that this is another method that you can use. And oh yeah, the last thing is going to be thumb pulling. So how do I do it exactly? Now this is like a really weird position that I'm going to have to show, but in order to get the most force, in my opinion, this is the position that you're going to have to use. And it's because the amount of pressure that you can put with only your hands is like really limited. So what do I mean? Okay, well, I'm going to have to move this chair backwards and then hopefully show you in that angle. So 1 second. Okay, so oops. First off, what you're gonna do is you're gonna have to basically lie down, and while you're lying down and you're thumb pulling, you have to actually bring your legs up, and while you're bringing your legs up, you're going to basically put your legs over your arms. And the reason you're doing this is because you're trying to brace your arms as much as you possibly can, because your arms are like really limited. And that when you're thumb pulling, I don't know if you know, but you can only get a lot of pressure by like putting your thumbs together like this and pushing off of them, which is kind of difficult because at a certain point of thumb pulling, you're not able to do that because the palate actually expanded. So yeah, anyways, let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, what you're doing when you're doing that, when you're in that position, and is the force. So what are the forces that are, I guess you could say, being more stabilized? So it makes it much easier to thumb pull. So the first force is basically in between these two fingers right here. There's going to be this force, you'll feel like around this area. Right? So what you're doing when you're moving your legs up like that is you're helping that force, because when you thumb pull and your palate's actually expanding enough, you will eventually have a difficult time having that force be stable, because your fingers are going to your hands when you're pulling are naturally going to go outwards like this. And in order to stabilize that, that's why you're putting your legs in between. Okay, that's why your legs are like this. Hopefully I demonstrate that good enough. That's why your legs are like that. Your legs are basically there to prevent your hands from going flying out like this and then messing up the force right here. Now, indirectly, because you're doing that, you also will actually feel more force on your forearms as well. So the two, I guess you could say, leverage points where the most force is going to be felt on your body is going to be around this area right here and on your forearms. So yeah, I think that'll be it for this video. I'm actually just not going to edit this video, honestly. And I am wearing this because it is freaking cold. Like, it is actually freaking freezing right now. So yeah. I hope you guys learned something. I don't think I have anything else in the notes to talk about yet. No. Okay. So yeah. If you're interested, by the way, once again, all the details behind all this stuff and how to speed this entire process up, because I really do think like I'm speeding this process up extremely quickly in comparison to how long it usually would take. Then go check out, once again, min-maxing health playlist. That's number 1. And number 2, check out the entire series of the bone remodeling playlist. You can either just watch the entire bone remodeling playlist, or you can watch the ones like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and so on, and see the journey and stuff. Now, by the time I get my results, once again, you guys are going to be late. So if you're like, if you're pretty old as it is and you want better results, then I think you're definitely gonna have to make sure that you're doing this ahead of time, because you don't want to be late. I mean, nobody wants to be late, right? It's sort of like buying into the stock market during a bull market and then losing all your money. Right? Like, nobody wants to be that guy. So yeah, once again, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.